Whoa, 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 let me make sure I have everything first. Sunglasses check, hat check, Pepsi check, vape check, notes check, thick skin check, and sources check. Man, let's go. Welcome back to Golden Blued, everybody. If you're a college football fan, you already know what to do. Hit the like and subscribe button because that's all we do here. Also, go check out our Patreon page. A lot of great perks over there. We have exclusive live shows for the Patreons, discounts off the merchandise store, live streams with college football games, and don't forget about the score prediction contest. Golden Blued is still rolling well past 9,000 subscribers, but we have a goal of 10,000 subscribers by the kickoff of the Backyard Brawl. That is September 1st. I know we can do it, but we can't do it without you hitting the subscribe button. Personally, the only thing left that I think is going to happen with conference realignment this year is the Big 12. I think on August 1st, whenever Brett Yormark officially takes office, that's when we'll see an announcement of the Big 12 adding more members. Remember, they lost Texas and Oklahoma last year, and they added BYU, Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston. Now they're going to add more teams from the Pac-12. Who are they going to be adding? Well, they tried to add Oregon and Washington, but that's not going to happen. I think the Big 12 ends up getting the Arizona schools, and then maybe a Colorado, maybe a Cal, and maybe a Utah, but definitely the Arizona schools. But what about the teams that could screw things up in the future as far as for the Big 10 or the SEC or even the Big 12? Well, the first thing is Notre Dame. The Big 10 wants Notre Dame. They'll take Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Notre Dame. That's the four teams that they want. But Notre Dame wants to stay independent. They said as long as they can draw a $75 million per year payout, they're going to stay independent. And I think they'll figure it out. So Notre Dame is going to be taken off the list for the Big 10. So that kind of screws up the Big 10's plan. But I'm sure the Big 10 has backup plans. Instead of taking Notre Dame, they could take either Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. And with a comment that Kevin Warren made about having a school that represents the four corners and a mountain time zone, it could be any one of those teams. So I think the Big 10 does pick up Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and one of those teams. And it's because Notre Dame wants to stay independent. Another team that can mess things up, this time for the SEC, it's going to be Virginia Tech. Remember, the first four teams that the SEC said they want out of the ACC, if the grant of rights get figured out, are Clemson, North Carolina, Florida State, and Virginia. Well, Virginia Tech saying, ho, 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 ho. Virginia can't go anywhere without us. And I don't know if there's some type of state legislation that backs that up, but that's what they're claiming. They could end up taking Virginia Tech off the list for the SEC, or they could end up making the SEC take off of Florida State or North Carolina and add Virginia Tech with Virginia. So Virginia Tech might mess up that first four-team in thing that the SEC has been talking about. The next team that can make things a little difficult is Colorado. Now, Colorado would actually fit into the Big 10. But how much value do they actually bring? That is a decision that the Big 10 has to make. And maybe they've already made that decision and we just don't know who it is. I believe that the Big 10 already knows who they're bringing in. We're just trying to guess who that fourth member is. It could be Colorado because they do fit in with the Big 10 as far as academically, culturally, all that stuff. But how much value do they bring? Right now, not much value. Their football is in the crapper. But if Colorado can get back on track, they actually draw a pretty good fan base. What about Utah? Well, Utah, they actually don't fit in the Big 10 very well. But they do bring a lot of value. So the Big 10 might have to choose between a team that doesn't bring any value right now, but fits in, or a team that doesn't fit in, but brings value right now. And that would be between Colorado and Utah. What about the Arizona schools? Arizona and Arizona State. Well, the bottom line with Arizona and Arizona State is one does not make sense without the other. In other words, whoever gets Arizona better get Arizona State, and whoever gets Arizona State better get Arizona. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense. They go hand in hand. And my money is on they're going to the Big 12. So what if the SEC can't figure out the ACC grant of rights? What do they do next? I think they turn their eyes towards the Big 12. Well, who would they get out of the Big 12? I know that they would get Oklahoma State and West Virginia. Oklahoma State and West Virginia are not on their first four teams in. They want those four teams from the ACC that I mentioned earlier, but they are on the next four in. So if the SEC were to go to 24 teams, Oklahoma State and West Virginia would be on the list. However, if the grant of rights don't get figured out for the ACC, the SEC might skip that step and just go ahead and add Oklahoma State and West Virginia. And those are two of the biggest fan bases left in the new Big 12. It would add some pretty good TV markets. It would give the SEC a new state as far as footprint in the state of West Virginia, and you keep Oklahoma and Oklahoma State together. I think that's a pretty good deal for both the SEC and the teams involved, Oklahoma State and West Virginia. The next team I want to talk about, Miami. My question is, why is the SEC or the Big Ten not showing any interest in Miami. I mean, the SEC straight up said, no, we don't want them at all. To the best of my knowledge, Miami's not on the first 4 teams in for the SEC, nor are they on the next 4 teams in. I could be wrong about that, and they might be on the next 4 teams in, but from what I've heard, they're not on the list at all. And Miami would fit into the Big Ten, but I'm not hearing anything from the Big Ten that would suggest that they want Miami. And that baffles me. I think Miami's a great brand. I think they would be a great addition to both the Big Ten or the SEC. So Miami's only option in the future might be the Big 12. And I think that would be fine as well. I think they would be competitive in the Big 12. I think they would still make some money in the Big 12 as long as the Big 12 survives. And that would be a great boost for the Big 12. One team that could mess things up that people are not talking about is Duke. Duke can mess things up for North Carolina. Duke can make it to where they pull a Virginia Tech and they're like, hey, you can't take North Carolina without us. And I'm going to be honest, nobody wants Duke. This is all about football. Duke has a great basketball brand, but their football brand is trash. So nobody wants to bring in Duke. But North Carolina is a really good brand and brings in a lot of money. So it comes down to, hey, if you get North Carolina, you have to take Duke. I think it would be more likely that the Big Ten would pick up that duo. The SEC wants nothing to do with Duke. They want North Carolina, but they definitely don't want Duke. So they would just cut ties with North Carolina instead of taking Duke and North Carolina. The Big Ten, however, I think they would take both Duke and North Carolina. There's one brand that's a big question mark right now, and that's Baylor. I think Baylor is the best brand right now available in the state of Texas that's not already in or headed to the Big Ten or the SEC. Now, the SEC already has Texas and Texas A&M. They have 2 strong brands in the state of Texas. Would they be willing to add a 3rd brand? I mean, it's worth the shot. The likelihood of that happening, I don't think is all that high. What about the Big Ten? Could the Big Ten be willing to get a brand in the state of Texas to get a footprint in the state of Texas? I'm not sure, because the only problem with Baylor is they're a private institution and they're a religious institution. Would the Big Ten be okay with that? Well, I mean, Baylor's going to bring you some money, so I would say it would be worth it. I just don't know if the Big Ten would be willing to overlook that. So Baylor's a big question mark right now. So the Big Ten wants Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Notre Dame. But the Big Ten probably gets Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and I'm going to say Utah. I know Utah really doesn't fit in like culturally or academically, but they do bring some value. So it could be between Utah and Colorado, and right now I'm going with Utah. What about the SEC? Well, right now the SEC wants Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, and Virginia. But if the ACC grant of rights don't get figured out, then the SEC gets West Virginia and Oklahoma State. And that's still a great addition for the SEC. What about the Big 12? Well, the Big 12 wants Arizona, Colorado, Arizona State, Utah, Oregon, and Washington. But I think the Big 12 gets both the Arizona schools, Arizona and Arizona State, and possibly Colorado and Cal. So I would say for sure Arizona and Arizona State, and then potentially Colorado and Cal. So y'all let me know in the comments section. Do you think these conferences get the teams that they actually want? Or do you think they end up with the teams that I think they're going to get? That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.